questions that employers could select from. Now, there was a legislative change that occurred at the beginning of the year, which dropped that threshold to businesses who were averaging just one employee or more, as long as that employee was not the owner of the business and was at least 18 years or older, holding a valid Social Security or an ITIN. So essentially it's expanded now to basically every business that's out there. Now for non-compliant employers, because we have reached a point now where there have been several deadlines for businesses to register for CalSavers, those that have missed their registration deadline, or have failed to complete the facilitation process, which includes sending us all of their eligible employees and then sending contributions into the program, we are now at a stage where we are starting to send compliance notices to those employers. And non-compliance fees are going to start off at $250 per employee for the initial 90 days that the employer is out of compliance after we've notified them. And if they remain out of compliance, we're going to tack on an additional $500. So there's a possible $750 fee per employee. And those notices are landing on employers' mailboxes. Our enforcement agency is Franchise Tax Board, so we have found that when employers disregard CalSavers notices, they definitely pay attention when the Franchise Tax Board is involved. Given that a lot of you, particularly from the chamber, might be more connected to the business community, something that we do like to put out there is that if you do run across a situation where you're talking to an employer and they're in the situation where they've now been fined and they've received a bill from Franchise Tax Board, do let them know that if they connect with us, if they get back onto the compliance route, meaning that they register for CalSavers or they let us know that they are now facilitating a private plan, we will go ahead and waive those fees. The point of the program is not to collect fees, it is to expand retirement access to Californians. Now for employee or participant eligibility, we do look at those businesses who have employees that are 18 years or older, who hold a valid Social Security or an ITIN, and this is going to be regardless of the hours that they work. So we're looking at all full-time, part-time, seasonal, temporary employees. Owners and officers who are reported as employees to EDD also count towards counting the average for eligibility, as well as workers on a visa. To determine eligibility for a business, we do receive our information from the EDD department. We take the number of employees that are reported for a full calendar year, and if the business is determined to have at least one or more employee, then we will then start sending the employer notices, letting them know of their eligibility, their options, and their registration deadlines. We also do like to mention that we are not intended to complete or replace any employer-sponsored plans. The goal here is really to provide access across the board and increase participation. Now let's talk about those registration deadlines. As I mentioned, prior to this year, the requirements to be eligible or fall under this mandate were businesses who were averaging 5 or more employees. So every spring, we receive fresh information from EDD, which tells us how many employees a business reported for the previous calendar year. So eligibility is based off of how many employees a business had from January to December of the previous year. So early this spring, we had information for 2022, analyzed those numbers, any new businesses or businesses who grew and now averaged 5 or more employees were identified. And then throughout the spring, all the way towards December, we now start sending notices to those employers. As their registration deadline approaches, those notifications start getting closer in time, letting them know that they will have until December 31st of that current calendar year to register or let us know that they've registered with a private sector plan. Now, at the beginning of the year, legislation changed, which dropped that, that eligibility down to just one employee. So that means that employers who were averaging 1 to 4 employees who previously did not fall under this mandate now are eligible to participate in CalSavers. And those folks are going to have a little bit of time to be able to get into compliance. We're issuing them a registration deadline of December 31st, 2025. Just given how new these changes are, we want to make sure that we have enough time to get in touch with those employers to notify them. And because they tend to be those smaller groups that don't have as many resources, they don't have an HR department, they don't have maybe a CPA who's notifying them of all of these labor law changes. We want to make sure that we're giving them enough time so that they are aware and they have time to look into what their options are. I do also like to mention that CalSavers is also open for individual registration, so you don't have to be working for a participating employer to participate in CalSavers. So if you're a contractor, if you're self-employed, if you're a gig worker, or if you are an individual that's working for a business who decided to participate in a private sector plan, you are also able to register yourself and contribute directly from your bank account. Now here are going to be a little bit of the statistics for participation in CalSavers. So as of the 1st of this month, we had a response rate of employers of almost 235,000 employers in California who had been identified as eligible. And this is going to be a cumulative of employers who have registered for CalSavers or have notified us that they have registered for a private plan. And out of those folks, the ones that did register with CalSavers, we have about 455,000 individuals who are not participating in a retirement plan. This is going to be excluding those businesses who registered for a private sector plan. We don't have numbers on participation from those, but those folks who did register for CalSavers have cumulatively contributed into their accounts just over $613 million. And that's just considering that, kind of our deadlines have our larger deadlines that included most of these businesses have just been a couple of years in the works. Out of all of those folks that are participating, their average contribution rate is at just over 5%. CalSavers is an automatic enrollment program, and the default contribution rate is at 5% because we kind of get a new wave of individuals who are registered every year. Tend to drop our average just a little bit, but we do see that number grow towards the end of the year. And those folks, our average monthly contribution is about $168,000. And about 15% of our participants are multiple employer accounts, which means that they're individuals that are working for multiple businesses that are registered for CalSavers, and they're contributing from both of their payroll deductions. So both of their paychecks from business A and business B that they're working for, there's a percentage there that's going into their CalSavers account. And this really shows individuals who previously were maybe working for businesses that maybe couldn't afford a retirement account. The average profile of that 7.5 million people in California who did not have access before, their median income was about $35,000 a year. They tend to lean about 2/3 of them, people of color, about half of them are women. Women in particular tend to have more gaps in employment where they're not contributing to their retirement savings because they tend to be the caretakers for their family. So anytime that you have a child and you take time off to retirement savings. So these figures right here should show you that individuals, regardless of the amount of money that you're making, you can still make an impact and have a little nest egg that you're setting up for yourself. Now, I'd like to go into some of the specs on facilitating CalSavers. When we designed this program, we really did take into account public opinion. So when the legislation passed back in 2016, one of the very first things that were done were to engage a group of stakeholders that were representing both the employer community as well as the interest of the consumer, because ultimately we did want to make this something that was easy for employers to be able to facilitate, but also the end user is the participant. They're the ones that are going to be funding the accounts. The purpose of this is for them. So what we wanted to know about those communities, what were the things from the existing plans on the market that were making it difficult for employers to be able to register with a retirement program and offer it to their employees. And there were 3 particular hurdles that employers reported, included the administrative burden. Small businesses tend to wear a lot of hats, and that's just an extra thing for them to do. The fees, private sector plans can be pretty expensive, and the fiduciary liability. If something does go wrong in the plan, the employer could potentially be liable. So in the design of the program, we kept these 3 things in mind. So we tried to design this to be very easy to facilitate for the employer. I'll get into some details in shortly. There are no fees for employers, so a business will never receive a bill from CalSaver for registering. We do acknowledge the time that it takes for employers to set up their account, to send us a roster of their employees, etc. But when it comes to a monetary expense, CalSaver does not charge businesses in order to, if they are participating in CalSaver. And employers are not fiduciaries of the program. The state and all of the contractors are going to be the fiduciaries. Now, what the employer responsibility look like include registering by their state required deadline. If a business is not sure whether they have a deadline of this year or a following year, recommend they got in contact with our customer service team, have their federal identification number handy so that they can look them up, and we can let them know whether they are on our radar, and if they are, when their deadline is. They need to set up their accounts, they need to register, they set up passwords, security questions, those type of things. So registering by their state required deadline and setting up an account takes about 5 minutes or so. And this is the step that they need to make sure that they're completing by that December 31st deadline. They're going to have an additional 30 days to complete the following steps, which includes submitting and maintaining an employee roster. So they can either send us a list of all of their eligible employees the same day that they register, or they'll have about 30 days to complete that step. Now, important here is also maintaining that employee roster. So after that initial upload, anytime that they do hire a new employee, they do have 30 days to send that employee's information to CalSaver. That's going to be regardless if the business has a probation period for the employee or whatnot. CalSaver does require that employee be added within a 30-day decision period. And then also submit employee contributions each time that they run payroll. So the first 2 there are going to be a one-time thing. The following 2 are going to be ongoing steps. So they will continue to make sure that they are uploading anytime that they hire a new employee. There's also an option to mark an employee as inactive if the employee leaves the employment, just to keep the employer's list clean, and then submitting contributions. And submitting contributions can either be automated through payroll providers if they're working with a payroll provider who has integration with CalSaver, or they can do it manually as well. Any small business owner or any business who is not working with a payroll provider and plans to do this manually, we have a more extensive series of webinars where we walk employers through the different steps that they would go through in order to send contributions over. It's a pretty quick process, and we offer those webinars every other Friday, and they're about 30-45 minutes. Now, a couple of things that employers will not have to do. They're not going to incur any program fees or have any fiduciary responsibility. We just covered those 2. They're also not going to be allowed to make any employer contributions into employee accounts. And this is not going to be a CalSaver feature. This CalSaver is an IRA program, and employer contributions or matches are not allowed on a federal level into IRA accounts. A couple of things that employers are going to want to make sure that they are not doing include encouraging or discouraging participation in CalSaver. By doing so, you're putting yourself in a fiduciary role. Also, providing advice about investment options, taxes, or participation in the program, or managing investment options. These are things that if individuals have any questions, they can contact the program, and we can provide as much education as we're able to. We do stop short of providing any advice, because then you are putting yourself in a fiduciary role, and that should be limited to someone who is licensed to provide financial advice. They also will not be making any distributions from the accounts or changing any of the employee information like addresses or adding beneficiary. These are all going to be services that the individual can do directly with CalSaver. We really try to limit the employer responsibilities to those things that you see on the left-hand side of the screen, so they're not burdened with some of the administrative duties that you see on the right-hand side of the screen. Now I'm going to go over some of the features of the program. So CalSaver is designed as an automatic payroll deduction IRA, which basically means that a portion of individuals' earned income is going to be deducted from their paycheck, and it's going to be deposited into their own individual retirement account. Now, it is a Roth account, so contributions will be contributed post-tax. The reason that it was designed as a Roth account is because any contributions that go in after tax, the employer does not have to include into the W-2. So again, keeping in mind simplicity for the employer. It is completely voluntary for individuals. The mandate is for employers and not the individual. So if someone does not want to participate, they do not have to participate. It is an automatic enrollment program, so those folks would have to actively opt out of CalSaver in order to not be participating or to not have contributions sent over from their paycheck. But there's also no open enrollment period. So if someone's doing the calculations and they just don't have that extra $50, $60, $100 to contribute into their retirement account at the moment, they can opt out, but then choose to opt back in if their financial situation changes in the future. And we, of course, notify employers of any changes that are occurring so that they are up to speed and make the appropriate changes. We also kept in mind that for a lot of people, this might be the first time that they are exposed to investments. So we tried to make this as simple as possible. Folks that do nothing are automatically enrolled into a retirement account. We have standard settings, or they have the option to customize those settings. So we start everyone off at a 5%, and they are contributing into a target retirement fund. But if folks want to change that, if they want to decrease or increase the percentage that they're contributing or the fund that their money is going into, they have the ability to do that. One of my favorite features is that the accounts are portable, so they are not tied to the employer, they are tied to the individual. So if I work for company A and I leave their employment and go work for company B, who is also registered with CalSaver, my contributions will go into that very same account. So I don't have to worry about rolling funds over from my old retirement account or forgetting that I have them. All contributions go into that very same account. And it's low cost for savers. We do charge participants a small fee, and that is what funds the CalSaver program, but it's a pretty competitive offering, and I'll show you what those are shortly. Now, to go into a little bit more detail about what those options are for participants, like I mentioned, CalSaver is designed as an IRA program, and the default setting is a Roth account, so after-tax contributions. The initial contribution rate for folks is set at 5%. We do have an automatic escalation feature of 1% annually to encourage additional savings. So the first year that you're participating, you're at 5. The following year, we bump you up to 6, etc., until you reach that 8%. And for the first 30 days that you're participating, we're going to put your funds into a money market fund. This is going to be in case someone missed their 30-day decision window and wanted to opt out of the program. They will liquidate their account and we'll close it out. But after those 30 days, those contributions and any additional contributions are going to be rolled over into a target retirement fund, which is an age-based portfolio. It's based off the individual's current age and their particular time horizon to retirement. Now, as I mentioned, individuals do have the option to customize their account. And one of the things that they can change is recharacterizing their account to a traditional IRA. So Roth accounts, you're going to have contributions that are entering after tax, but once you reach retirement age, you can withdraw those funds and any earnings tax-free. The contributions you've already paid taxes on, the earnings become tax-free once you are of retirement age. Traditional accounts, contributions typically enter pre-tax, and then once you reach retirement age and when you start making withdrawals is when you pay the taxes on those. CalSavers is a little bit different, where contributions are always entering the program after the individuals pay taxes on those. So for those folks that do recharacterize to a traditional IRA, we'll just send them the tax form so that they can claim that deduction on that next year's taxes. Also, individuals can change the percentage that they're contributing anywhere from 1 to 100% of their salary, just as long as they do not exceed the IRS limits. The IRS limits set for 2023, they're a little higher than last year. They're now $6,500. And folks who are age 50 or older qualify for a catch-up contribution of an extra $1,000, so they can contribute as much as $7,500 a year. And the automatic escalation feature, which bumps you up a percentage a year, that is optional and can be turned off for someone that wants to be in more control of where their percentage changes. And we also have a pretty short list of investment options. Again, we were trying to build this to be a really simple program, keeping in mind a lot of folks, this might be their first time participating in these types of programs. So we have our money market fund, which is going to work pretty similar to a savings account that you would open up at a bank. The target retirement fund that I mentioned, which is going to be an age-based portfolio. We have our environmental social governance fund, which are known as those ESG funds. They're kind of known as those feel-good funds. They divert investments from controversial companies like tobacco and guns. A core bond fund for any individual who wants to have a more conservative option, and a global equity fund for those folks that want to invest a little bit more aggressively. So you do have a little bit of control in selecting which investment vehicle you want to be in. This is going to be a list of all of those funds with a little bit more detail, also the fees that are associated with them. So we do have a hybrid fee model where you pay a fixed fee of $4.50 every quarter, as well as an annualized asset-based fee depending on which fund you are in. So this is going to be a fee for every $100. So for example, that money market fund, for every $100, you would pay 42 cents on an annual basis. This is just deducted over time from the account balances, whereas the fixed fee at the end of the third quarter, or at the end of 3 months every quarter, you'll see a flat fee deducted from your balance. For anyone that would like to learn more about the investment options and their performance history over time, we do have that available on our website. So even though CalSaver is fairly new, launched in 2019, all of these options are going to be off the shelf. So they do have a performance history prior to CalSaver. So if you want to see how those target date funds have performed over the last 5 or 10 years, you can visit our website, and we have links that can show you that information. Now, how you can help us spread the word on CalSavers. The easiest thing is probably just following us on our social media, following, liking, or resharing any content that you feel like your members would, it would be valuable for them to hear about. We have pre-written newsletter content where we can just plug in to your newsletters to your constituents. You have email listservs, that pre-written content is super easy to just plug in there. We do have standing webinars for both employers as well as participants. So any business who is interested in participating and wants to learn a little bit more, or wants to learn about how they would go about facilitating it, we do offer those on a weekly basis for employers, bi-weekly in Spanish, every week in English. And we also have educational webinars for participants. So if they want to learn a little bit more about what retirement savings is, why it's important, why they should start early, etc., we have those available as well in English and in Spanish. We do them on a weekly basis in English, bi-weekly in Spanish, and we can also do dedicated webinars. So if you know any other organizations or any groups of employers that would benefit from a presentation, we do have a field team who works directly with employers, helping them get their account set up. If they have any questions on the facilitation process, they can schedule a Zoom meeting with them. They can go to their place of business if they rather do that face-to-face. But essentially what we want is these conversations to continue, not just the mandate portion, because we do want employers to be aware that this is a requirement. We don't want them to fall into that non-compliance list and then get a bill because kind of turns into a negative experience for them going forward. But we want to keep the conversation going on this access gap of retirement savings, and why it's so important for people to be putting money away, and particularly starting early. Since a lot of you do work with individuals who are a little bit younger, maybe freshly graduated from high school, starting college, this is really pivotal years for them to start contributing into their accounts, even if it's a tiny amount, because those initial contributions that you make have the most time to be able to grow. So the earlier that you start, the less that you have to contribute later on in life. We do have a lot of really great resources on our website. If you go to the link that you see there at the bottom, we have a toolkit where you can find all of that pre-written newsletter. We have handouts for employers, for participants. We have the links where you can go to register for those webinars as well. And then on our website, we have a lot of downloadable information. So for employers that want to get just some quick info on CalSavers, want to download some information to share to their employees, we have a pre-written template as well for anyone who's planning to register and wants to communicate to their employees that they're registering and what to expect. They just need to plug in their business information there, and they can distribute it out to their employees. So we're really big on resources. If you do visit our website, you'll be able to register for our webinars directly from there as well. You'll find all that downloadable information. If you do visit there for any employer that you're directing there, I would really recommend checking out the frequently asked questions. They're really quick. If you're short on time and just want to get some quick answers on those basic things, who's eligible, or which private plans exempt me, how do I register, all of the most frequently things that we ask. That's a quick way to get all of those answers. We have a really great support team. Our customer service line answers phones within 30 seconds. We have a line that's dedicated to employers and another line that's dedicated to the participants, as well as email, because not everyone's really loves being on the phone with people, so that's an easy way to get your questions answered as well. And the on-site support team, they do one-on-one appointments with employers. They can do presentations for their employees, and all of this is going to be at no cost. So definitely encourage folks to take advantage of all of those resources. And most of these are going to be offered in a multilingual option. So our website, a lot of that downloadable information is going to be available in the top 10 most spoken languages. Our customer service line, we have representatives who speak English as well as Spanish, and access to a translation service line for all other language needs. And our on-site support team, we have English, Spanish, Mandarin, and Cantonese speakers. So really big on resources here. I'm going to put my contact information out there in case anyone has any questions, or if you want me to connect you with any of our field team representatives who you could refer over directly to employers who have questions or want to set up a meeting. But that's going to conclude my presentation. Thank you very much for your time, and Cam, I will hand it back over to you.
Carolina, I just want to let you know that I put something in the chat that you might be interested in reaching out to. There's the YMCA works with childcare providers, and I know sometimes they'll have like an assistant or two working for them, and that might be good info for them.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, I see that link. YMCA daycare. Thank you very much.
Great. Well, thank you, Carolina. That's really interesting information. I wasn't aware of all of the things that they do. So I see, Jack, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, real quick. Will this affect every employer except sole proprietors eventually?
Yes, there's very little exemptions that are given. The only exemptions that are given are for religious institutions, tribal institutions, and government agencies. So any employer who has employees, so excluding any contractors, any employer who has an average of one or more employee, as long as that one isn't the owner. So if you or you change your business type and you're still the sole employee that's being reported, you can exempt yourself or request an exemption. But there's going to be very few exemptions that are given to business owners.
So essentially, they're forcing every employer to offer a retirement plan.
There is a mandate in California for retirement savings, yes. So any business who is not already offering a retirement program, from the list that I showed you, like 401ks, pensions, the long list, then would have to register with CalSaver.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mike?
Yeah, so you answered one of my questions. So nonprofits as well do need to comply.
That's correct. Yes,
right.
that's a misconception. We get a lot of nonprofits who reach out exempting because of their status, and nonprofits aren't excluded from this one either.
Well, that's good to know. I'll make sure we spread that in our that news in our nonprofit committee. And then second question, what's the access code? I went on the website right now to get started. It's asking for an access code.
Yeah, so when we notify employers of their eligibility in their contact letter, there's going to be an access code. So because CalSavers was created for those employers who fell under this mandate, only those eligible businesses can register. So you need to have been identified as a business who falls under the mandate to be able to participate. And when you are, we'll create an access code for you. Businesses that believe that they're eligible or aren't sure, they should contact our employer assistance line if they haven't received a letter from CalSavers. And if they are told that we do have them on our radar, they'll be able to provide them their access code for registering.
So okay, great. Thank you.
Quick question, Carolina.
Yeah.
Do companies that employ a PEO, do they have to be in compliance also?
So it depends. Typically, if they employ a PEO, then their employee count is either non-existent or very low. So if it's non-existent, then no, because you do have to meet that average. If for any reason they were reporting a couple of employees under their own business, then they would have to offer it to those employees that they're reporting. But more often we see that the PEO claims all of the employees, so those businesses wouldn't fall on our radar. So we get a list of all of the employees that are reported to EDD. And if there were 0 employees reported, then the employer wouldn't be identified as eligible.
Because that's a co-employment, that's a co-employment environment, and the onus of proving who owns the employees then has to be decided.
That's correct, yes, and the PEO is also excluded. They aren't responsible for registering the employers for their client.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I just have one quick question. This is for all the state of California, correct? Not just Southern, all of California?
Good question. So for businesses, it is a California mandate. Each state has, or the majority of the states have legislation in different stages where it's either still hasn't passed or implemented other programs. But this is something that it appears to be coming to many other states. But for individual registration, you don't have to be a resident of California. For individual registration, this could be for any individual with a Social Security or an ITIN and has earned income and is at least 18 years or older. But for businesses, particularly those that might employ individuals who are living outside of California, only the individuals that are receiving California W-2s are the individuals that we are counting and that the employer should be uploading to their employer portal.
But you're saying that other people from other states can apply?
Individual people,
as
you
long
don't
as they have a
to
Social
apply.
Security number.
Correct, yes. And it's not an application for individual registration. It's pretty simple. It requires some basic information similar to opening a bank account. We'll ask you for your name, your social address, basic pieces of information so we can verify identity. And then you would just contribute directly from a bank account. So the only difference from folks that are self-registered versus participating from their business is that folks that are participating through their employer are going to have a percentage that's deducted from their paycheck. Individuals that are self-registered are going to tell us how much they want to put into their account at what frequency.
And what about individuals that have been working in California, but they don't have a Social Security number and don't or maybe are not here legally, would they be able to contribute or be a part of it?
So folks that have a social security or an ITIN number. ITIN
Okay.
numbers are numbers that are given to folks by the IRS so that they can file their taxes when they're working here. Anyone who is working illegally, I would recommend is if you can't withdraw your money from your account because you're not able to prove your identity, then why put money into the account to begin with? So you're gonna, also when you open up an account, it's a financial institution that we work with from the private sector. So they are gonna run a basic identity check on the individual to make sure that the information that they're providing matches so that we can establish an account for them. And if the individual, later on gets to a point where they need to make a withdrawal and they can't verify their identity, we can't release those funds. So we don't recommend it.
Okay.
Well, that was really interesting. And I think there's, gosh, a lot of information there to unpack too. I think a lot of our members are going to be interested in hearing more about this. So, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. And if there aren't any more questions, we will go ahead and close out for today. All good. All right. Thank you all for coming. Really.
Very nice. Thank you.
Thanks.
Great job.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
Pam
much.
and
Thank you for
Carolina.
your
Well
time.
done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Pam. Take care. Take care, Mike. Take care,
See you,
Dolores.
Jack. Bye, everybody.
Bye.